today is the fourth of the core four you find in order to properly set up your mindfulness practice, and this is finding your focus. Now, as soon as I say finding your focus, as I mentioned when I taught you centering, people immediately think of concentration and think of the metaphor, concentrate. So I'm concentric, right? I am drawing my attention and I'm making a tunnel, and then I'm trying to stick it and hold it on something. And the way you were previously taught to concentrate was basically people yelling at you, pay attention, concentrate. So you've developed this we all have developed this very habitual automatic sense of what it is to concentrate. You're slightly under threat and you've got to bring your mind in, you've got to hold it, you got to stick it and hold it on something. And it's kind of this enduring act of will. Now, when you take a look at the Buddha's teaching, he talks about the Eightfold Path, and one of them is right concentration. Two things to note about that. Because he tells us there's right concentration, that clearly indicates that there's wrong concentration, concentration that's actually not conducive to the transformation and wisdom he was seeking to teach people. So that immediately comes to mind, well, what is right concentration? But before we can answer that, we have to understand what the word right means. We have to hear it correctly, because we tend to hear right and we tend to hear it in terms of righteousness and like it's a moral thing, like doing good. That's not the kind of right that is meant. It's closer to right-handedness. It means dexterous. It means skillful. So we have to have the appropriately skilled kind of concentration. Now, a good way of understanding what this is to take a look at some of the work done by Ellen Langer. She was one of the first people to work on mindfulness in the West. She wrote a book in the 80s actually called Mindfulness. And to also look at the research about what kinds of attention are actually conducive to insight and enhanced self-regulation, because that's actually what we're after. Now, it turns out that sort of hard fixed focus, what's called a hard focus, the way Ellen Langer does, isn't really good for insight and self-regulation. Now let's bring up a contrast. She contrasts between hard focus and soft vigilance. So I'm going to do something here. Let's do it. Let's do the old way first. I'm going to hold up my finger. Concentrate. Concentrate on my finger. Concentrate. 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 Now, as you notice, that is both challenging and boring at the same time, and it's not doing very much. I yelled too loudly. So, hard focus, not good. Let's replace it with something else. Okay, now look at my finger again. Notice that my finger is slightly bent, that there are three sections to it, that it's actually not white, that there is, a sort of pinkish tinge in some areas. You might even see, if you can look in closer, there's some hairs toward the base of my finger. And my finger's position is slightly shifting around because my hand can't be completely stable. Now notice the difference there. Notice how you were able to stay with my finger. You were able to stay involved with my finger. This is called soft vigilance. Soft vigilance. Please remember the word vigilance. We're going to talk about it again. So we're doing two things at once here. We're teaching you how to appropriately concentrate, but I'm also introducing you to this idea of vigilance or watchfulness, and we're going to come back to that when we talk about the 5 factors of inquiring mindfulness. So soft vigilance is this exploratory thing. What you're trying to do is constantly renew your interest in what you're paying attention to. Rather than just a hard fixation, you're trying to constantly renew your interest in what you're paying attention to. That's why it's a soft, flowing vigilance. In Tai Chi Chuan, we talk about having tiger eyes. These are eyes that are doing that soft vigilance, constantly flowing over your opponent when you're sparring with them. Typically, in fact, what people do in conflict situations, self-defense situations, is they hard fix. They fix on the person's face. You shouldn't, by the way, fix on people's face. You should be paying attention to their shoulders. Or when people talk to victims who've been held up by a gunpoint, the victims can describe the gun really well, and they can't describe the face of the assailant. We don't want hard fixation. We want tiger eyes of the mind. We want a soft, flowing vigilance, because this is actually conducive to insight. This is conducive to self-regulation. This is conducive to self-transformation. Think about renewing your interest. Think about what the word interest means. It comes from two Latin words, inter esse. It means to be within something. Inter esse, to be within. So what you're constantly trying to do is renew your interest. Constantly find something new about it. Explore it. Look around. Think about concentration as what you're trying to do is get one moment of noticing, to stitch together, to engender, to lead you into another moment of noticing, which leads you into another moment of noticing. Not just passive holding, right? But this active, exploratory, ongoing noticing. So what you want to do is you want to think of concentration as creating a momentum of mindfulness, right? Where that one moment of not just being sort of attached to the thing, but in it, present through and with it, not just present to it, but present through and with it, right? So what you want to do is create that continuity. And you see what I keep doing with my hands, because the metaphor that's used, right, is to become like a self-rolling wheel. Right? You instead of concentration being like this, right? Hold my mind from the outside and push my way through. Can you? And it takes time to shift. So I'm describing this easily. Unlearning that habit and learning what I'm talking to you about takes time, requires patience, requires befriending yourself. But you want to shift from and pushing to, wait, I can get interested in this, and that takes me deeper and deeper and deeper. And the fact that you've already learned how to flow helps this. There's actually a continuity between finding your flow and finding your focus. Okay, so what's an exercise for getting this sense of concentration? Again, let's frame this correctly. You're not going to instantly go bang into this. You've had a whole lifetime of concentrate. Now you're trying to enter the stream, as the Buddhist metaphor is. You're trying to find this current that renews itself and flow with it. It will take time and practice and diligence to shift over to soft vigilance. So what we do as an exercise is the following. We do everything we need to do. We find our center, we find our root, we find our flow. We start just a basic meditation, basic vipassana, in, out, in, out. Then we move to the exercise. And the exercise is the following. It's called counting your breaths. Now, some other traditions use counting your breath as the main meditative focus. There's versions of Zen that do that. That's not quite what we're doing here. And secondly, you can't frame this, and the way we're automatically framing it is we're, oh no, right? If I try to count my breath, I won't be able to count it for very long. I'll get distracted. And we're using the wrong sense of right concentration. We're using that sort of moral judgment sense. What we're after is instead, no, I'm trying to develop a increasingly evolving, refined skill. Okay? So what we do is we do the following: in and out, and we count one. Now, what does the counting look like? And this is, I can't be in your head. Again, I'm sure you're grateful for that, as am I, right? So if the majority of your attention, center stage, the mic of your mind, right, is on your breath, keep counting. There can be stuff going on around here, blah, 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 murmuring in the background, things flitting. But if the majority of your attention is center stage on your breath, right, keep counting. But when you're genuinely monkey mind and the center of your attention moves elsewhere, then you reduce the count back to 0 and start again. And this is where people go, oh no, I can't do this. I'll only get to 1 or 2. That's not the point of this. The point of the counting is not to try and push yourself to a longer count. That's why I spent that time to really try and distinguish. The point is just try, and as much as you can, fall into the kind of flowing attention you're doing, right, when you're doing Vipassana. But here's the difference. Try to continually renew your interest in your breath, and finding your flow helps that. What's changing? What's different? What haven't I noticed about my sensations? And when you notice that the count has made it past 2 or 3, you'll lose it. You'll go, oh, and then you'll have to reset, and that's fine. That is fine. But then when you catch yourself about to leave your breath, try to remember as quickly as you can. Okay, what did that feel like? What did it feel like to be in the stream? That's the whole point of the counting. The point of the counting is to give you a moment of remembering. Sati means to remind. That's the Pali word, the Sanskrit word for mindfulness. It ultimately means to remind, to remember. So remind yourself, remember, what was it like to be in the stream? What was it like when I was sort of flowing with my breath rather than pushing myself along? Okay. Now, again, you're gonna have to be making an effort. And it's going to take time to shift from that automatic, habituated style of concentration. But this is what the exercise is designed to do. It's designed to give you, oh, that's what it feels like. Oh, that's what it feels like. Oh, that's what it feels like. Oh, and you're going to have to do this 1,000 times. That's what it feels like. Oh, that's what it feels like. That's what it feels like. Okay. Now, I can't talk you through this exercise because I can't be in your head. So what we'll do is the following. We'll do the following. There'll be silence for a very long time because you're going to be centering, rooting, flowing. Okay. And then at some point, to remind you, because sometimes people forget when I've taught this in the past, right? I'll say, okay, count your breath. And we'll do that for a bit. Count your breath. So 2 things. Follow your breath in that renewing interest. When you're distracted, first, before you even note the distraction, note, oh, right? When you realize, oh, I'm distracted, try to remember, what did it feel like to be in the stream? Note the distraction. And then when you return to your breath, don't just return, fixing. Return, renewing your interest, trying to inhabit your breath. Involve yourself in it. Not just present to it, but present through it and with it and in it. And then after a while, I'll say, okay, stop counting your breath and just follow your breath. Go back to basic Vipassana. If you need to, you might need to sort of reconnect with your sense of flow, or maybe even a quick check on your center, your root, and your flow. Then try and follow your breath. Follow your breath, trying with that, focal and peripheral. Don't lose your flow. Here's your focal and your field awareness, right? But where it's focal, try to constantly renew your interest. When you're distracted, label your distraction with an ing word. And then when you return your breath, return in a sense of trying to renew. Try to engage in a process of more active, exploratory noticing. Okay? So that's what we're going to do. One more time. Don't get into judgment about the counting. That is not its point. This is not about righteousness. This is about that gentle correction in befriending yourself when you're trying to acquire a skill you don't yet have. Okay, we will begin when I say begin. Remember to find the core. Remember to find your center, your root, and your flow first. Begin. I'll now do a quick review. The first lesson was about finding your center, front to back, side to side with your torso, your head, into your center, really savoring it, then centering your attention by stepping back and looking at your mind, labeling your distractions with an ing word, returning your attention to your breath, centering your attitude, neither fighting nor feeding that distracting monkey mind. The second lesson, teaching session, was on rooting, the appropriate form of relaxation, not a relaxation that takes you into sleep, but that takes you into mindfulness. And we had, 3 lines, front, center, and back, where we did the process of looking, listening, loosening, letting it flow, letting it go, finding your root. Then we learned how to find our flow in meditation. We did that in the abdomen, expanding both across and in interoceptive awareness, noticing different kinds of sensation, putting a real challenge on our attention, really deeply integrating introspection and interoception together. We did that here, the heart area, the shoulders, the back, and then one flow, so that we have a peripheral awareness. We're following the whole of the breath through the whole of the torso. Our focal awareness is in our dantian, where without forcing it, trying to do baby breathing. And we have a focal awareness here and a field awareness throughout our bodies. Yesterday, we learned about the proper right concentration, and it's in the Eightfold Path that there's right concentration, which means there's wrong concentration. We're trying to break, and it will take time. We're trying to break the habit of the concentration we have learned, which is people yelling at us, us pulling our mind in from the outside, sticking it onto something. Instead, we pursued the idea of the correct form of concentration is a constant noticing, a constant renewing of interest, a trying to be, not just being present, but being present, not just being present to, but being present in and through and with our stimulus, constantly opening it up with soft vigilance, the term that Ellen Langer introduced. We do that, of course, by after we begin meditation, we count our breaths, not because we're entering into any judgment. What we're doing is we count our breaths so that when we are distracted, we take a quick moment and note, that's what it was like to have that continuity, that momentum of mindfulness, that entering the stream. All right, so that's the review. So please remember always in that order to find your center, find your root, find your flow, find your focus. Don't hyperventilate, don't force your breathing. Right? You have to sometimes make minor adjustments if you feel like you've lost your center. Right? If you're having a more pressing distraction, try initially, like maybe 3 or 4 times, to just label and return to the breath. If it gets to be too compulsive, though, right? Remember the principle. We're befriending ourselves. We do not want to be merely enduring. Okay, this is an educational situation, not an imprisonment situation. So if you get a pain and you've tried it 4 times to label it, return to the breath, and it's just getting overwhelming, then do what you need to do to alleviate it, and then return to your breath. All right? I think that's everything so that we can get started. It's wonderful to be with all of you here today. It's a beautiful sunny day in Toronto, which is a nice uplift. Given this situation, we're all in. All right, everyone, let's prepare to sit. We will begin when I say begin. Begin.